The conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every statehouse, every office of the federal government. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Hello, everybody. You just heard the words of President Dwight D. Eisenhower in his farewell address to the nation, coining that magic phrase, the military-industrial complex. This is all by way of me introducing another Chapo movie episode, and we got a good one for you. This is the one we wanted to do for a while, and, you know, longtime Chapo listeners will probably be aware that I think second only to Martin Scorsese's Casino, this movie is maybe one of the most referenced films in Chapo history.
I think it's safe to say.
Safe to say it's high up there. Yeah. You might remember such classic hits as, "You don't know shit, Mr. Garrison. That's because you were liberal and never been fucked in the ass before." And Triangulation of Fire. See, that's the key. That's the key. Fun and games. We're, of course, talking about Oliver Stone's conspiracy masterpiece, JFK.
I believe newly relevant in the era of Q.
You know, around the time this movie came out, around it's like after that, its first circulation on premium cable. 3 young boys all watched it.
Oh, yeah.
Separated by geography, class, race. One of them was known as Jewish, but actually, if you look at certain theories, descended from Genghis Khan. They all watched it, and they all thought, "Damn, this is so true."
Yeah.
How did this get out there?
It's true.
And we were the, spoiler alert, it was the 3 original hosts of this show. And, you know, we were the only people under 40 who watched it and felt that. Wouldn't you know it, we came together to form a show. The reason we started the show was because we all believed the extremely specific conspiracy theory, and still believe it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
In the movie JFK.
Everything in JFK is correct.
Yeah.
JFK was killed by gays.
Yeah.
The gays killed because of Kennedy. I remember watching it on VHS, and it's so long
It's a
that
double
it came on
yes.
2 cassettes in a big chunky box.
The Godfather.
Yep.
The Deer Hunter.
Yep.
The Right Stuff.
Mm-hmm.
JFK. Those double VHS.
Rodney
box
Dangerfield's Nutty College. All the classics.
No, and the 3 original of the hosts of the show all watched this film independently one of another, and then came together to create something magnificent, much like David Ferry, Clay Shaw, and Leon Harvey Oswald.
Yep.
To
We
do
did it,
something
fam.
special. And as a preface to the discussion in the film, I think what is so fascinating about JFK is, as like a film, like as a piece of cinema, it is so flawlessly done and executed at every single level. The acting, the directing, the cinematography, the editing, the music, like everything about it, it creates just such a thoroughly compelling and
It
seamless
casts a
tapestry.
spell.
It has one of the all-time best casts of any movie ever made. It is stacked from top to bottom with god-tier performances. We will get into each of the stellar casts and cameos in this movie. But like I said, what makes it such an interesting film artifact is because, like I said, at every single level is a masterfully executed piece of cinema that nonetheless portrays a narrative that is an absolute travesty.
It is completely insane, but it didn't stop me from being a kid and drawing little boxes on my note paper in class connecting LBJ to the CIA and the mafia and be like, this is how it worked. My God, they did it.
That is the least surprising thing you've ever told me about your
holy
teenage years,
shit.
Matt.
I wish there were video games around when you were a kid. Like,
There were. I just didn't play them.
the video games
I
that
did
were
that
around.
instead.
The video games that were around when you were a kid, it was, you know, like the initial Mario games, and then things called like Quest of Zagon. So like nothing as immersive as CS 1.6 yet, not at the time.
Video games where you move a dot through a maze.
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that the bad video games left me with no other alternative than to solve the murder of the president.
Yeah, I see. Like I love this movie for so many reasons. The first of which because it's like I feel like ideologically it's a relic. That I've been thinking about like this type of liberal, the Oliver Stone, Ted Turner liberal, and it's like I think like if you're listening, maybe a few of your moms or dads were kind of like this. They were people who they were boomers who they lived through all this incredible social change, they lived through Vietnam, but they also lived through like the destruction of the idea of execution of power in the American liberal mind. But their distrusts were in the right places. Like they implicitly distrusted like the intelligence community, finance, all these things. But they just had no idea what to do about it. And because they had no like formal economic or power critique, they would come to these absurd conclusions that were like, oh, we should draft George Bush to fight in the war. Or like, you know, there was a bunch of evil gay guys who killed JFK. And guys who absolutely hated the CIA, hated every president, but were like, yeah, one vote for Bill Clinton, please. And that's like, you don't see a lot of that anymore. Like the Hollywood liberal now is so fucking dull.
Well, they're just complacent. They've totally embraced the idea of neoliberal capitalism as like the end state of social and cultural evolution. And like we all just need to get on board. And what are you complaining about? Like they don't have that sense of aggrievement that like the ex-hippies did.
I mean, okay, so like what makes this movie fascinating is like, yes, it is about the JFK conspiracy, which is like the godfather of all American conspiracy theories. And it is fascinating to watch this movie now in a new age where like everything is a fucking conspiracy theory. Yeah. Like fuck Epstein, 9/11. We live in an interconnected web of so many different overlapping conspiracy theories. And like the thing is, they're not all wrong, as we've established on the show. And the narrative that Oliver Stone presents in this movie is also not all totally wrong.
No,
as well, but like
that's what makes it compelling. Is it's this deft mixture of total left field bullshit, complete conjecture, and then just shit that's like, that's weird, isn't it? That was weird that happened.
Yeah.
Lee Harvey Oswald just went to fucking Russia. He renounced his U.S. citizenship and then just came home 2 years later with a Russian wife, and they're like, yeah, that's cool.
You learn a lot in your early 30s.
Just a kid from New York.
He was
what Lee Harvey Oswald literally was. Just a kid from New York. Through my eyes from the book depository.
This is Killing the President, the biggest audition of all time.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, Oliver Stone's JFK follows the real life criminal case brought the only actual homicide case brought against people for the assassination of John F. Kennedy Jr. John F. Kennedy by New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison, who is played in the film by Kevin Costner, and a portrayal of steadfast, upright.
Very Henry Fonda.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
a Henry Fonda type role, or Gregory Peck.
Yes, very much. Atticus Finch. All the way.
To Kill a Mockingbird. And what's fascinating about this movie, like I said, Matt, like you have pointed this out, is that the essential narrative that Stone creates in this movie is the 1-to-1 template for the QAnon conspiracy.
Which is why that's why you might wonder, if you're a normal person and you're looking at QAnon, you're like, okay, this is weird. But I guarantee you the thing that baffles you the most is John F. Kennedy Jr., where the fuck did he come from? And this movie explains why. Because in the Q cosmology, this movie was made by a dinosaur liberal in Oliver Stone. And because they all died out, because the Oliver Stone liberals all died out, that now the only people who respond to that narrative are the Q right. Like the sort of the lumpen American reactionary. Because in their mind, JFK was when everything went to shit. The death of JFK was when America stopped being America, when you got rid of the Leave It to Beaver white picket fence, like a white American middle class country, and everything that's come after that is all a result of the death of JFK, and that's why they bring JFK Jr. in here. He faked his death so that he could come back and then poison George H.W. Bush in his hospital bed to punish him for killing JFK, because that was the original sin that created this weird multicultural globalized America where jobs are going away and being replaced by fentanyl and all, and you know, there's all this gayness on television and shit like that. Like every like mingled cultural and economic grievance, all of it started with the JFK assassination. And this movie has that ideology. Like it didn't even know it was doing it, but it ended up creating the Q mindset, because it's JFK wants to go up against the elite who want us all to go to war, and they kill him, and that ushers in this era of chaos. I mean, the movie starts on the day of the assassination, and then there's a 5-year.
Well, we need
jump.
to begin like it begins like immediately after, like
Yeah.
minutes after the shots ring out in
Right.
Dallas. But before that, it begins with this montage of like a mix of historical footage and actual film things. And the first voice you hear in the movie is Eisenhower's farewell address. Then it begins this montage narration. Narrated by Martin Sheen,
Another
hilariously.
lion of American
Martin Sheen, who
liberalism, a
narrates
dinosaur.
and this is like kicking off the movie is maybe the most ludicrous part of Stone's thesis, because it kicks off with Martin Sheen, the voice of like just this mellifluous voice of like trustworthy,
Yeah.
fatherly, Jebediah Bartlett himself telling you, and it portrays Kennedy as like, I was just reading it here. It says, November 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts wins one of the narrowest election victories in American history over Vice President Richard Nixon. And then he goes, alongside his beautiful, elegant wife, Jacqueline Bouvier, the symbol, JFK is the symbol of the new America of the 1960s, signifying change and upheaval to the American public. And it sets up this idea of, JFK, this young guy, hot wife, beautiful family.
One word, hot wife.
That represented, the new frontier, civil rights. Like the ask not what you can do if you go. We will go to the moon.
Yeah.
Our civil rights, and this idea that
new
like
frontier.
the new frontier, and we're gonna bring peace to the world and end the Cold War. Okay. That is maybe right off the bat. That is the most horseshit part of this movie. The setting up that the JFK administration was like the Hope and Change administration, because by every actual historical account, JFK said a lot of things about civil rights, but absolutely dragged his feet on that. Came from a fanatically right-wing anti-communist family. Was absolutely persecuting the Cold War with as much vigor as those who came before him, and. Then he talks about like, he was basically pushed into doing the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion by the CIA. That was a failure. Then the Cuban Missile Crisis. And then, of course, Vietnam begins. He sends the advisors over. That begins to, ramp things up. And then, Martin Sheen tells you like he was getting ready to bring the troops home.